in a small coastal town in South Texas, now known to the world as Starbase, stands a machine bigger than anything humans have ever built. Over 400 feet tall, powered by 33 engines firing at once, generating enough thrust to shake the ground for miles around, this is Starship. Elon Musk's biggest, most expensive, and riskiest dream. Its stated goal sounds simple, but it's one of the most ambitious things a human has ever attempted. Send people to Mars and turn humanity into a multi-planetary species. So the real question is, will Starship actually get us to Mars? Or is it just another expensive, spectacularly explosive prototype? Let's start with the basics. Starship isn't an ordinary rocket. It's the world's first fully reusable two-stage rocket system built at this scale. It has two parts. At the bottom is the Super Heavy booster, which lifts the entire rocket off the ground at launch, and on top is Starship itself, the actual spacecraft that can carry cargo or people. Both parts run on Raptor engines, designed in-house by Musk's company, and these engines burn methane and liquid oxygen, very different from traditional rocket fuel. Why? Because methane can be manufactured on Mars, from the planet's own atmosphere and soil. That means if Starship ever lands on Mars, it could theoretically produce the fuel needed for the return trip right there. It's the cleverest, most ambitious piece of the entire mission architecture. The whole system is designed so that nothing goes to waste. Once the Super Heavy booster does its job, pushing the rocket upward, it returns to the launch site and is caught directly by two giant chopstick arms on the launch tower, which SpaceX calls Mechazilla. This isn't science fiction. It's already happened, multiple times. And Starship itself, the upper portion, goes to orbit, completes its mission, and then attempts to descend back through Earth's atmosphere and land, much like a plane lands, except at far higher speeds, and with far more heat to manage. The biggest advantage here is that if both parts, booster and ship, can be reused, the cost of getting to space drops dramatically. Traditional rockets are used once and then either fall into the ocean or crash, destroyed. Every launch means building a brand new rocket, costing hundreds of millions of dollars. If Starship becomes fully reusable, in theory the same rocket could fly again and again, like an airplane, and launch costs would shrink to a fraction of what they are today. Now let's talk about what makes this entire program so dramatic. Its testing philosophy. SpaceX's approach is the exact opposite of traditional aerospace companies. NASA or Boeing spend months, years on simulation and ground testing to make sure everything is perfect before launch. SpaceX's philosophy is different. Build it, fly it, see what breaks, fix it, fly it again. This is called rapid iterative development, and it means explosions are a normal, expected part of the process. Not a shameful failure, but the fastest way to gather real data. But in 2025, that philosophy went through its toughest test yet. In January 2025, Starship's 7th test flight disintegrated roughly 8 minutes after launch. The investigation found that the engine system experienced harmonic resonant loads far higher than expected, damaging fuel lines, causing methane leaks, and igniting a fire in the engine compartment. This wasn't a small problem. It was an entire rocket tearing itself apart from its own vibrations. 2 months later, in March 2025, the story repeated itself. Flight 8's upper stage also disintegrated, this time over the Caribbean Sea, losing control and communication about 8 minutes into flight. Twice in a row, in nearly the same spot, in nearly the same way. Then came May 2025 and Flight 9, where the upper stage broke apart in the atmosphere, and falling debris forced commercial aircraft to change course. And if that wasn't enough, in June 2025, another Starship prototype, being fueled for a ground test, exploded right on the launch pad. The explosion caused significant damage to the surrounding test facility infrastructure. Think about it. In just the first 6 months of 2025, 4 separate explosions. One science journalist summed up the streak bluntly: Explosions 4, SpaceX 0. Questions started piling up worldwide. Was Elon Musk's biggest dream actually a dead end? Did this many repeated failures signal a fundamental design flaw? Several experts openly questioned whether SpaceX was really learning from each failure, or whether the company had hit an impasse, where every new test was simply repeating the same old mistakes. But SpaceX's response stayed consistent. Investigate, understand what broke, and fix it before the next attempt. And gradually, that approach started paying off. After completing its investigation, the FAA cleared Flight 10 for launch. And that mission successfully addressed the unresolved issues from the previous 3 flights. It was a turning point. The program began to build momentum from there. In 2026, the story entered a major new chapter, Starship version 3, the most advanced iteration yet. This new version flew for the first time in May 2026, with both the Starship spacecraft and Super Heavy booster receiving significant modifications. On that flight, the booster failed to properly ignite for its boost-back burn and crashed into the ocean during a downrange landing attempt, while the upper stage completed the rest of its mission, despite losing one Raptor vacuum engine during ascent. Then came July 2026, and this time, the picture looked considerably better. SpaceX launched its 13th test flight, with the giant booster achieving an on-target, if hard, splashdown near the Texas Gulf Coast, while the Starship upper stage successfully completed a suborbital hop to the Indian Ocean. The 407-foot, 2-stage rocket, powered by 33 methane-fueled Raptor engines, launched with roughly 16 million pounds of thrust, putting on a spectacular show for residents and tourists around Starbase. But don't mistake this for problem solved. A satellite industry expert noted plainly that while the test flight showed progress, SpaceX remains a long way from achieving rapid reusability of the entire ship, particularly because the flight ran into trouble relighting its Raptor engines. And that's no small detail. A similar failure during an attempted landing could cause severe damage to the company's own launch pad. An official government report backs up that caution. The Government Accountability Office stated plainly that SpaceX faces major challenges getting the Super Heavy Starship ready for operational use, particularly in developing its cryogenic fuel management technologies. Currently the program's top risk. That cryogenic fuel management issue is worth understanding, because it's the single biggest technical hurdle standing between Starship and Mars. According to the government report, SpaceX's plan for moon missions depends on on-orbit propellant transfer between multiple Starship vehicles in low Earth orbit, so the human landing system Starship can then dock with NASA's Orion spacecraft in lunar orbit. In plain terms, 2 rockets need to dock with each other in space and transfer fuel, something no one has ever done at this scale. SpaceX is still preparing for this propellant transfer demonstration, currently targeted for late 2026. And the report didn't sugarcoat the timeline either. SpaceX is more than a year behind its original schedule. The delay matters, because the whole world is watching this program closely. NASA's Artemis program, aimed at returning humans to the moon, depends on Starship's Human Landing System variant. NASA's administrator has said he's extremely confident that Artemis 3 will happen in 2027. But if Starship's development timeline keeps slipping, that confidence could face real pressure. Now the biggest question of all. What about Mars? This is the true heart of the whole story. Musk's original vision was to make humanity a multiplanetary species, so that, if an extinction-level event ever hit Earth, human existence wouldn't end with it. The plan calls for uncrewed cargo starships to go to Mars first, carrying supplies and infrastructure, with crewed missions eventually following. As of publicly verifiable data through mid-2026, the readiness of an uncrewed cargo starship for the late 2026 Mars transfer window remains in active testing and has not been independently confirmed. In plain terms, the Mars mission that was once planned for 2024 or 2026 has repeatedly slipped, and there's still no firm date anyone can promise. This isn't a new pattern when it comes to Musk's ambitious timelines. From Tesla's full self-driving to the Hyperloop, Musk's announcements are often as ambitious as his actual delivery timelines are optimistic. But here, the scale is so massive and the failure rate so public, every explosion live-streamed, watched by millions worldwide, that every setback makes global headlines. So what do we actually take away from this story? First, Starship's approach is genuinely revolutionary. A fully reusable, two-stage rocket running on fuel that can be manufactured on Mars itself, that's not a small idea. If it works, it won't just be a rocket. It will reshape the economics of the entire space industry. Launch costs could drop so dramatically that satellites, space tourism, and eventually deep space exploration could all be reshaped. Second, at this scale of engineering, failures aren't just expected, they're necessary. When you're building something that's never existed before, simulation and modeling can only take you so far. Real data only comes from real testing, and real testing means things sometimes blow up. This is SpaceX's approach, and it's the same approach that gave us the Falcon 9, today the world's most reliable, most frequently flown rocket. Third, and perhaps most important, the gap between ambition and reality is never trivial. Sending humans to Mars, where the atmosphere is toxic to us, radiation levels are dangerous, and the nearest help is millions of kilometers away, isn't something solved just by building a rocket. Life support systems, radiation shielding, food production, water recycling, and most critically, a rocket that can consistently and safely land and launch. All of it has to be solved simultaneously. By late 2026, the picture looks like this. Starship is now surviving flight after flight, the technology is maturing, and SpaceX is gradually applying lessons learned from its earlier explosions. But fully reusable operations, orbital refueling, and Mars-ready systems are still works in progress, still behind schedule, and a single mistake is still enough to make headlines around the world. So the real question isn't whether Starship will eventually get to Mars. History shows SpaceX has already pulled off things once considered impossible, like landing rockets back on Earth, something that once sounded like pure science fiction. The real question is, how long will it take? How many more explosions will there be, and will the world's patience and funding hold out long enough for this dream to become reality? Because if Starship really does make it to Mars, it will be one of the greatest achievements in human history. A species that went beyond its own planet and learned to survive on another. But if it doesn't, that will be a story too. One where the ambition was so large that reality couldn't quite keep pace with it. For now, work continues day and night at Starbase. New ships and boosters are being built. Static fire tests are underway, and the next launch is always just around the corner. Every time that rocket lifts off the ground, the world holds its breath. Will this one succeed? Or will another fireball bloom in the sky? Either outcome, in some way, pushes this dream a little further forward. If you enjoy stories about the world's most ambitious, riskiest infrastructure and engineering projects, subscribe and stay with us, because in the desert, beneath the ocean, and now even above the sky, the next great engineering story is already being written.